Sex is not a sin. The hidden history of sexual morality. The question few dare to ask. What if one of the most emotionally charged subjects in human history has also been one of the most misunderstood? Before you react to today's title, pause for a moment. This is not a call for recklessness. It is not an attack on faith. It is not an argument against morality. It is an invitation to think. The question is simple. Is sex itself a sin? Or have many people confused a natural human capacity with the ways human beings sometimes misuse it? Every person watching this video exists because two people had sex. Long before there were governments, churches, mosques, temples, courts, or written laws, there was human reproduction. Sexual attraction is woven into biology. It is one of the most powerful forces in nature, not only among humans, but throughout the animal kingdom. If that is true, why has sex often been treated with fear, embarrassment, or shame? The answer is more complicated than many people realize. Throughout history, nearly every civilization has developed rules about sexuality. Ancient Egyptians, Greeks, Romans, many African societies, Indians, Chinese civilizations, Jews, Christians, Muslims, and countless others all created moral or legal expectations around sex. Yet those expectations were not identical. Some cultures celebrated fertility, some valued lifelong marriage, some accepted practices that others prohibited. Some were more permissive, while others were more restrictive. That alone tells us something important. Ideas about sexual morality have always been shaped by both religious beliefs and cultural values. Many religious traditions do not teach that sex itself is evil. Instead, they distinguish between sex within the boundaries they consider morally acceptable and sexual behavior they believe is wrong. Likewise, many secular societies regulate sexual conduct through laws concerning consent, age, exploitation, and abuse, not because sex itself is considered wrong, but because the consequences of certain behaviors can harm others. This distinction matters. Confusing sex with harmful sexual behavior can lead to unnecessary shame. Confusing natural desire with permission to do anything can lead to harm. Human beings have always lived between these two realities. Our biological instincts are powerful. Our ethical responsibilities are equally important. Why then have societies invested so much effort in regulating sexuality? Part of the answer is practical. Sex creates children. Children create families. Families influence inheritance, property, social identity, and community stability. Because sexuality affects so many aspects of society, communities have often developed norms and rules around it. Historians point to concerns such as family structure, lineage, inheritance, disease, and the protection of vulnerable people as reasons many cultures developed sexual codes. That does not automatically prove every rule was fair or timeless, nor does it mean every restriction was simply a form of control. History is usually more complicated than either extreme. Another important question is whether feelings of guilt around sex always came from religious texts, or whether they were also shaped by later cultural traditions, local customs, and social expectations. Many scholars argue that attitudes towards sexuality have changed significantly over centuries, even within the same religious communities. This reminds us that beliefs are often influenced by history, as well as scripture, philosophy, and lived experience. Perhaps the deeper question is not whether sex exists. It obviously does. The deeper question is this: how should human beings use one of the most powerful forces they possess? That question deserves more than slogans. It deserves honest reflection. In the next part, we will explore how different civilizations understood sexuality, why their views differed, and what lessons those differences might still hold for us today. If you were born in a different country, a different century, or a different civilization, your understanding of sex might be completely different from what it is today. That simple observation tells us something profound. Human biology has remained largely the same, but human interpretations of sexuality have changed remarkably across history. In many ancient societies, sexuality was closely connected to fertility, family, and survival. Before modern medicine and advanced agriculture, population growth was often viewed as a sign of prosperity and strength. Marriage and childbearing were not merely private matters, they were seen as contributing to the future of an entire community. Ancient Egypt, for example, left behind artwork and literature that suggest sexuality was often treated as a natural part of life. While there were expectations about marriage and family, the culture did not always approach the subject with the same level of public discomfort seen in some later societies. The ancient Greeks presented another picture. Their philosophers debated self-control, desire, virtue, and pleasure. Some celebrated beauty and physical attraction, while thinkers such as Plato explored the idea that love could also elevate the soul beyond physical desire. Even within one civilization, there was no single unified view. The Romans generally accepted sexuality as part of ordinary life, yet they also imposed social expectations tied to status, family honor, and citizenship. Again, sex itself was not the only concern. The context, responsibilities, and consequences mattered. Across Africa, traditional societies developed diverse customs surrounding courtship, marriage, fertility, and family life. Many communities viewed sexuality as a gift, connected with the continuation of life, while also surrounding it with cultural rituals and responsibilities. These traditions varied greatly from one people to another, reminding us that there has never been a single African view of sexuality. Asian civilizations were equally diverse. In India, some classical traditions explored sexuality as one dimension of human life, alongside ethics, prosperity, and spiritual development. At the same time, many Indian philosophical and religious traditions also praised self-discipline and restraint. In China, ideas influenced by Confucianism often emphasized family harmony, responsibility, and social order, while other traditions explored different understandings of human desire. When we turn to the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, we again find complexity rather than a single message. These traditions generally affirm marriage and regard sexual intimacy within marriage as good, while teaching that some sexual behaviors fall outside their moral framework. Over centuries, different communities interpreted these teachings in different ways, shaped by theology, culture, and historical circumstances. This is an important distinction. Many believers would say that their faith does not teach that the human body is evil or that sex itself is evil. Rather, it teaches that sexual intimacy has a moral context. Others argue that, in practice, some communities have emphasized guilt and shame so strongly that people came to fear natural desires instead of learning how to manage them responsibly. This disagreement continues today. Psychologists have also entered the conversation. Modern research generally recognizes sexual desire as a normal part of human development. At the same time, psychology emphasizes that healthy sexuality involves consent, mutual respect, emotional well-being, and responsibility. In other words, acknowledging sexuality as natural does not remove the need for ethical boundaries. Perhaps this is where many public debates become confused. People sometimes imagine there are only two positions. One says every sexual desire should be suppressed. The other says every sexual desire should be celebrated. Human experience suggests the truth is more complicated. Freedom without responsibility can become exploitation. Rules without compassion can become unnecessary shame. Real wisdom may lie somewhere between those extremes. As you reflect on these different perspectives, consider this question. If cultures across history have disagreed about many aspects of sexual morality, how should we decide what is wise today? Should our views be shaped primarily by biology, by religion, by philosophy, by law, by psychology, or by some combination of all of them? These are not easy questions, and simple answers rarely do them justice. In the next part, we will examine how guilt, shame, and social expectations influence the way many people think about sex, and how individuals can separate inherited beliefs from convictions they have examined for themselves. Next, we shall delve into the psychology of shame, consent, relationships, and critical thinking while continuing to distinguish historical evidence from interpretation. Perhaps the greatest question is not whether sex exists, or even whether people disagree about it. The real question is this: how should human beings relate to one of the most powerful forces in their lives? For many people, the first lessons about sex were not lessons at all. They were warnings. Don't talk about it. Don't think about it. It's dirty. It's shameful. In many homes, schools, and communities, sex became something surrounded by silence, rather than understanding. The result is that countless people reached adulthood with confusion, fear, or guilt, instead of knowledge. Psychologists have long observed that shame and guilt are not the same thing. Guilt focuses on an action. I did something wrong. Shame often targets the person. There is something wrong with me. That distinction matters. When people grow up believing that even having natural sexual feelings makes them morally defective, they may struggle with anxiety, secrecy, or self-condemnation. At the same time, removing all ethical boundaries can create a different set of problems: broken trust, exploitation, manipulation, and harm. History shows that societies have tried to balance these competing realities in different ways. Some leaned heavily toward restriction, others toward freedom. Neither extreme has eliminated human suffering. Perhaps wisdom begins when we stop asking only, "Is this permitted?" and begin asking deeper questions. Does this action respect the dignity of another person? Is there genuine consent? Is there honesty? Does it build trust or destroy it? Does it leave people healthier, freer, and more responsible? These questions move beyond slogans. They move us toward ethics. One reason conversations about sex become so heated is that they involve far more than biology. They touch identity, family, love, commitment, religion, culture, law, and personal experience. Two people can look at the same subject and reach very different conclusions because they begin from different assumptions about what gives life meaning. That is why humility is important. We should be willing to examine our beliefs without assuming that everyone who disagrees is ignorant or malicious. Throughout history, religious traditions have sought to answer questions about purpose, holiness, and moral responsibility. Philosophers have asked what leads to human flourishing. Scientists have explored biology and psychology. Each discipline offers part of the picture, even if they sometimes disagree. Critical thinking does not require rejecting tradition, nor does faith require rejecting reason. A thoughtful person can ask difficult questions while treating both evidence and other people with respect. Perhaps the greatest danger is not asking questions. The greatest danger is refusing to ask them. Ask yourself, which of my beliefs come from careful reflection? Which come from habit? Which have I accepted simply because they were repeated often? Questioning a belief does not automatically make it false. Defending a belief passionately does not automatically make it true. Truth has never been afraid of honest investigation. Another lesson history teaches is that human beings often swing between extremes. One generation imposes excessive control. The next rejects almost every limit. Then, another generation attempts to restore balance. Real maturity rarely lives at either extreme. Freedom without responsibility becomes selfishness. Authority without compassion becomes oppression. Healthy relationships require honesty, mutual respect, self-control, communication, and genuine care for another person's well-being. Whatever one's religious or philosophical convictions, those principles remain valuable. So perhaps the conversation should never have been reduced to a single question. Is sex a sin? Perhaps the better questions are, what is the purpose of sexuality? How should power, desire, and responsibility relate to one another? How do we protect both freedom and human dignity? How do we raise future generations with knowledge instead of fear, and with responsibility instead of recklessness? These questions deserve thoughtful answers. If this discussion has challenged assumptions you've carried for years, do not rush to accept or reject what you've heard today. Read, study, listen to voices you agree with, and voices you do not. Examine history, examine your traditions, examine the evidence. Most importantly, examine your own thinking. A mature mind is not one that never changes. It is one that changes only when there is good reason to do so. Whether you ultimately conclude that your inherited beliefs were right, partly right, or mistaken, let your conclusion be the result of honest inquiry rather than fear or social pressure. The search for truth has always demanded courage, and perhaps courage begins with a simple willingness to ask difficult questions. Pursue evidence with integrity, and treat those who disagree with the same respect we hope to receive ourselves. Because wisdom is not found in silence. It is found in the lifelong pursuit of truth. To learn more about humanity's deepest mysteries, subscribe to Mind of Afsok, and do well to share this video.